Hey, readers. So we're going to continue our reading of Alarums and Excursions, Issue 1. We got about halfway through it last time. We're going to pick up with Mark Swanson's part of the zine called the Kith Interstellar Bulletin. And by the way, whenever we see these names in all caps, this is who it's directed at. So this is a response to probably something that was in APAL, or once we get to the later issues, it'll be something that's probably from a previous issue. So this is Mark Swanson responding to Lee Gold and so on and so forth. Lee Gold. Yesterday, one character entered Goree in an attempt to get rid of a ring. He had acquired the ring in Hell's Gate, the other local dungeon. Since it had a picture of a two-headed duck on it, its effect was to make everything he saw and heard sound like a two-headed duck. The rest of the party entered in hopes of loot, while Paula took a character in out of curiosity. Eventually, the party encountered the sorceress Jane Doe. One of the clerics promptly muttered, "Me Tarzan, you Jane." He was then polymorphed into an orc, at which sign of her goodwill and sense of fitness the party was greatly relieved. They requested that she remove the ring, since talking to him through his pet golden coin, the one talking object that did not sound like a two-headed duck to him, was a drag on the party. It was non-animate, hence. She agreed in return for a fee of ring and coin. She left them, taking the ring and a junior prince of the dwarves. Ransom would have been 50,000 gold pieces and an item of their choice from his father's hoard had they freed him. Part of his curse had been that he could tell them what he was or how to free him only if they asked directly, which they never did. All they had ever asked the prince was, which way to the treasure? Is there a monster through that door? Etc. Just goes to show how important it is to think about other people. Paula might describe the rest of the expedition. Her character is now an adeptress. Virginia Bauer. The proper limit is dependent on a good many things, most notably the average maturity level of the players. But 6 is a good rule of thumb. Actually, the problem can be dealt with by the DM running monsters reacting to everything said. Whispered conversations, arguments, etc. are all excellent excuses for attacking. This does result in a high casualty level for a while, of course. If a lawful fighting man is taken over by a neutral sword and proceeds to kill as many as possible, it makes sense for him to attack first the ones he has gotten along least well with. It's amazing how fast some people can lose characters. Tom Digby. In Goree, rifles will jam or backfire, especially since the characters don't know about guns and will not therefore clean them. Also, modern arms use bullets light enough that armor could be of some use. Remember, plate was wiped out by 2-ounce lead balls. Me. One of the other game masters has an entrance corridor that continually repeats, "No thief can be lawful, no hobbit can be neutral." Where do hobbit thieves come from? As parties proceed down the corridor. Then there was the local character that spent 30 minutes, game time, trying to talk to a magic mouse whose sole message was, "Are you Flubbit the wizard?" Ted Johnstone, to the contrary, Goree is not nasty, nor even overwhelmingly dangerous, but the local belief that stupidity is not sufficiently nasty to be its own reward is rather common. Also, we tend to object to games with solutions, hence monsters only vulnerable to non-magic weapons, kryptonite, etc. Concerning relics. Bob Sachs, a local dippy game master and occasional D&D player, has had pity upon the clerics. For a fighting man can find a sword that will greatly improve his strength, power, a magic user can get wands, etc. He has proposed relics, saints' bones, blessed statues, etc. Gary Gygax wrote saying that they had a policy of not referencing any existing religion, but how about ... Ted Johnstone. My comment on the non-existence of a charm monster spell was a symptom of my usual disease of first draftitis. I've read the rules, but haven't memorized them. 2 points. However, on a larger subject, I'm a supporter of the slogan, D&D is too important to leave to Gary Gygax. Gary has produced other games in the past. The problem has been that they are not interesting in their full form. They tend to be flawed by simple, bad solutions to complex problems. Thus, in Gary Gygax's games, a magic user gets to use each spell once a day. If a first-level magic user gets to charm one person a day with no other magical acts permitted, Gary's version of the spell is entirely appropriate, as is the no saving throw against sleep, the lack of restrictions on how often a character can be healed, etc. The rule can be found vaguely in Book 3 and explicitly in Gygax's magazine number 3. As I said, Gary has trouble telling which rules are so completely obvious that he doesn't need to explain them. Welcome, brother heretic, or were you planning to do it that way? This problem, how to limit the magic users, is second only to the question of what are the characters doing as defining the game. Gary Gygax says that a medium has one spell a day, a seeress gets to cast 2 a day, etc., and they're all out on a treasure hunt. It's a simple solution, but I don't like it. Actually, Ted, it was the appearance of those characters that inspired me to invent Kryptonite. Outline them would have delayed the game. I usually try to insist on each person having only one role, since the rules assume a normal distribution. As for liturgic lemure, the thought was that a non-prime prime requisite was essentially irrelevant to how good your character was. In the case of cleric/strength, not quite justified. Running a substandard character can be fun. You just have to try harder. There's currently a third level magic user with an IQ of 7. Both strength and wisdom are lower. That wizard appears to have grubstack, Kamsin, and ought to receive an appropriate share of the treasure as a reward. A third? 10% Lee? You knocked them in the Old Kent Road after this nice old geezer with a nasty cough. You got the hat as a part of a will. Dick Any. There will be a wargaming convention in Baltimore, July 25 to 26, that will include Gary Gygax running D&D expeditions. I will attend with Gori, since the current plans are 2 dungeon masters per 1,000 attendees at John Hopkins. So yeah, they would kind of bring their dungeon with them, because that would be a persistent campaign, that they'd be running. That would be their dungeon, because all these dungeons in these early days were all DIY, had to make their own dungeon, and they'd bring them so new players could experience them. And they would run these huge parties of people/characters through them. Okay, we move on to If It Comes Up Magic by Barry Gold. Let's say you're doing treasure determination for lair treasure when a monster is found in its lair. Book 2, I assume pages 3, 4. Treasure table, book 2, 20, page 22. Or for room treasure, when an empty room or non-lair monster room has treasure in it. Book 3, 7. An indication of maps or magic comes up. The descriptions given in the book are out of order and hard to follow. Drawing on my experience in computer programming, I drew up a program for making up the magic portion of the treasure. All page references are in the form volume page number, with the volume in Roman numerals. I used the following abbreviations for dice: D4, D4, D6, etc., up to D20, and then an abbreviation for percentile, etc., etc., etc. For layer treasure, if the table indicates any 2, then make 2 separate determinations starting at step 1. If it indicates magic, for example, 3 magic and 1 scroll, then go directly to step 4 for the specified item. Okay, we're going to kind of skip through this. So you basically just create a methodology for determining treasure across these, multiple OD&D books. So determining treasure, magic items, different types of magic items, swords, and of course, I'm assuming if it's got a special purpose, it's intelligence and alignment. And all those attributes that go with that. Lee and I, as publishers of Alarums and Excursion, recommend that you buy the rules for Dungeons & Dragons if you don't already have them. Xeroxing somebody else's copy is unethical and illegal, too. If you're going to get involved enough in the game to build your dungeon, you should at least spring for $10 for the rule books. If you aren't making your own dungeon, you don't really need the books. Some other player can tell you how to make and play a character, so there is no excuse for making a bootleg copy and depriving Gary Gygax, the game's inventor, of his fair share. The latest prices we have are D&D for $10, Chainmail and Greyhawk are $5 each, dice at $2.50 per set, and you get one of each, D4, D6, D8, D12, D20. Chainmail is a predecessor of D&D and is useful for resolving missile fire and melee. Greyhawk is the first supplement with new spells, monsters, and treasure. And then they have who you can write to, Tactical Studies rules with their address in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And you can add the 4% sales tax. So even in 1975, we had some piracy problems with the game. These games would land in universities or amongst groups of friends, and it was just, one person had a copy, and they're like, well, we'll make a copy of it. Because obviously these books weren't that big, and they could take that little booklet and put it on the glass of a Xerox machine and run them off. Okay, so we're continuing with Kith Interstellar Bulletin number 56 by Mark Swanson. If Gandalf was 11th level, he was very restrained about it. Local opinion has him tabbed at 6th or so. Look at the 4th level spells and considering what you would do with them in various tight places in canon. Perhaps magic was less developed then. Dan Goodman. With regard to cursed rings, local opinion has it that if you attempt to remove one by cutting off a finger, you are certain to cut the wrong one off the first couple of times. Cutting off the hand would get rid of the ring, but the hand stays gone. Gary Switzer. Miniatures also? Does anyone make a good orc figure? Agreed, chainmail isn't all that good a set of rules. The problem with using miniatures is that this forces setting up each room, which slows down the game. Jack Harkness. Nice music. And he has struck out. Too bad about the words. I want to hear about the All Green expedition. We had a recent case here. The local person you would least like to enter a dungeon with was running through a dungeon, smashing orcs and other first-level monsters with great glee. 4th-level magic user and 4 relatives. At this point, Dungeon Master's roommate showed up with girlfriend at 11 p.m. Person, etc., does not take hints. So, you've been surprised by 20 cloud giants. You're in melee with them. Your party is dead. Let's go to 20 sewers. Person, etc.'s comment was, I didn't know you could meet cloud giants on the first level. Tedrin, the limitation is a daily one. Hence, a person should probably set about 1 spell for each hour they rest, 2 for every hour they sleep. Halber's ambition is fairly mild. Must be the genetic genotype showing through. Consider Shaka. Phlogiston Dragon Theory is clearly a winner. The Navajo, wonder if it got it right this week, language was once claimed to be the only in which relativity could be intelligently discussed. Hilda Hannafin. Presumably you had no problems with CO poisoning, despite burning a great deal of poison in a small room. And a mirror would make someone much more visible, hence more likely to be shot at in a missile fight. At some point, parties in Goree tend to start seeing the back of wandering monsters frequently. Where were the 300 orcs? Proposal for character type of singer or bard. Michael Slemon, contributed by Dan Pearson. So it's interesting. This is I don't know if there was a bard yet in OD&D at this stage. Probably not. The following pages represent the suggestions for use of a character type based on a prototype figure like Orpheus in the Greek tradition, with a background philosophy that music hath charms to soothe the savage beast, that even animals and plants and sticks and stones can succumb to the harmonizing or exciting effects of song. Some players already use a chanted or sung interpretation of their magic users, as would be expected from some types of characters. For example, a Finnish wizard, or even to some extent in Western European tradition, viz., the name enchanter. And I intend no disallow that practice, though some players may want to switch some of their magic users over to this new type. Primary intent of the proposal is 1. To have a category in which all types may advance indefinitely, the dwarves to certain disadvantages compared to others, and elves a slight advantage. I would also suggest that dwarves not be allowed to begin as singers till they have completed the course of their progress as fighters. 2. To allow neutrals to have limited access to some of the cleric spells. I have included in their powers essentially all the spells of both magic and clerical spell tables, with certain modifications due to the way I envisage a sung spell to operate, i.e., that with an extra psychological edge and a compensating material disadvantage. As this proposal is discussed, we might well strike out some of the spells not given singers and add other, specially musical spells. However, I'd like to include some major clerical effects, such as the dissolution of undead, an effect of the singer dispel evil, and the possibility of raising the dead, though this is made chancy with reincarnation being the more usual effect, on the theory that song has always had very strong associations with the practice of religions. For practical playing of a singer, I propose that hit points, experience, and saving throws be intermediate between those of clerics and magic users. They would be allowed to fight with any weapon, but like magic users, advance offensively in groups of 5. The prime requisite for a singer would be a new 3 to 18 point characteristic called, for want of a better term, inspiration, like Bardokin's version, and any singer would be permitted to operate during a given adventure as a fighter, cleric, or magic user, whichever one he has the highest prime requisite for, choosing one role forever after that as his alternative if there is a tie for highest alternative prime requisite. Similarly, I would allow any other character type to play as a singer if his inspiration were average or above. Again, with the exception that dwarves may not sing till they have reached the top of their profession in fighting. Fighting ability in these cases would go according to the highest level reached in either alternative role. The concreteness of these proposals should not be taken to mean that I would resist suggestions from changing or adding to what I have set down here. Indeed, much probably could be done to improve what is here. All that is a playable suggestion from which any modifications can depart. Singer's improvisation. This sequence is a referee option, and it is recommended that singers have alternate spells for use when it is disallowed. The improvisation spell appears on each level of the singer spell table, and the singer must have the improvisation spell for each lower level for his improvisation spell at a given level to work. To use the spell, the singer needs 1 turn to concentrate on forming his improvisation, 2 turns if dexterity or inspiration is below average. If the singer's psychological advantage is 3+, he can improvise 1 in response to a non-surprise attack. Thereafter, he must have a full turn of relative quiet to come up with anything. The effects of the spell are judged by the referee on the basis of the following criteria. 1. Inspiration plus the psychological advantage of the singer. If the inspiration is 15+, the improvisation will have its desired effect and no harmful side effects. Unexpectedly good effect if inspiration is 18+. Inspiration 7 to 4, the spell will work, but be a bit chancy on the side effects. 50% chance minus 10% times the psychological advantage of the singer. If inspiration is 6 or lower, the spell will not have sufficient effect to do any good and may have very obnoxious side effects. 75% chance minus 15% times psychological advantage. 2. Appropriateness of level. If the spell's goal is higher than the singer's improvisation level, i.e. a 3rd level improvisation trying to create a fireball or raise dead, the spell will be unsuccessful and have a chance of creating bad side effects, 25% chance for each level too high. Side effects take the form of results from the singer's level of improvisation could have called up. If players are feeling creative and referee is willing, the improvisation can be judged by requiring the player to actually make up a verse or 2 as an alternative to 1 and 2. 4. If referee does not limit improvisation to the standard spell tables, the player may attempt the improvisation of an entirely new spell. In this case, the referee has the obligation to judge carefully the level of effect aimed at by the player. See 2 above. And then we have the names of the levels, hit dice, it looks like, and XP and the spells. Singers may fight anytime with any type of weapon. They use any magical items except wand staves, rings, or spell scrolls as opposed to protection scrolls. They are the only ones to be able to use magical musical items, unless otherwise specified. Okay, singer spells. Unless specified otherwise, spells are like those of clerics and magic users. Like magic users, if there's a difference between the two. The major difference is that singer spells have effect only when being sung, until the 5th level spells, or unless otherwise mentioned. Thus, there's no singer's lock, though a high-level singer may put a wall of iron across the portal. However, sometimes the effects will linger. The song may echo in the memory of the listener, or a curse, once removed, will not return after the song ends. Song spells must be heard to have effect, except for perception spells, which operate by the meditation of the muse. So that an inhalating wall or spell of silence will stop them. If the latter case, the singer should be allowed a saving throw for penetrating the sphere of silence. The range of spells are controlled by the loudness of the song. Roll 2d20 to determine maximum range, 10 to 200 feet. Spells of psychophysiological effect gain an advantage for the singer depending on his inspiration and whether he is human, elf, or dwarf. So there's a table for psychological advantage for elf, human, dwarf. There are 4 types of spells: protection, perception, psychophysiological, and material. And then we have a list of spells. I'm not going to read through these. Protection from evil, read music, read language, read magic, detect evil, charm person, sleep. Then we get cure cause light wounds, etc., etc. So just a customized list for this class. Simon's proposal will be continued next issue. I myself feel singers should be allowed only as a subcategory of magic users with extra bonus for charisma. There's a note from the editor Leagold. Okay, then we go to Lyndon Brock's log. This is going to be a tough read just because of how it was either mimeographed or Xeroxed, whatever that was done at the time. As I mentioned last video too, I've redacted this person's address and phone number. So people used to, put those in there. So people could reach out to them. They could send them mail, or if they were local, give them a call, or just have a conversation on the phone. These were people that were part of this community, and they wanted to meet other D&Ders, as they called themselves at the time. So anyway, Lyndon Brock's log. First entry for the maiden expedition of Alarums and Excursions, June 1975. This is number 336 in a seemingly endless series of Fornchy publications, and responsibility for all but the reproduction is accepted by Ted Johnston. Gives his phone number. Call between noon and midnight Eastern Time. Next month, I'll have my call phone better organized. Dice as random number generators are a key feature of our game, but is not quite that simple, as a quick examination will show. Only a single die is a random number generator. Additive dice invariably generate numbers in a bell-shaped probability curve, with its peak rising higher and sharper as more dice are used. It is the intent of this monograph to examine the statistical distribution of different numbers and combinations of the 5 types of dice available to us: 4-sided, 6-sided, 8-sided, 10-sided, and 12-sided, referred to hereafter for convenience sake as D4, D6, D8, D10, and D12. The 20-sided polyhedron serves as a 10-sided die, has the digits 0 to 9 twice repeated on opposing faces. Unless such a die is modified by tinting one sequence of digits and calling them teens, it may be treated mathematically as a 10-sided die. I have encountered such a die. Some years ago, we were playing 5e, and it was only 2 players. I was a barbarian, and my friend that was playing, who had not played D&D in quite some time, was playing a paladin. And we had a session, first session, where that paladin couldn't hit a damn thing. Couldn't do anything. And my poor barbarian was having to just take the brunt of everything. Come around to the next session, he's exhausted. I've raged so many times and had to do all this stuff, and he's rolling this die, and he's rolling nothing but 5s and 6s and 7s. And he rolls this dice in front of me. I look down at it, and I realize it's not a traditional 20-sider. It's one of those old school dice, 0 to 9 twice. And I said, "What are you doing?" Picked up that dice, showed him what it was. He chucked it across the room. I retrieved it later and kept it. I still have it. But yeah, and then as soon as he switched to an actual D20, he started kicking butt, smiting, doing all that good stuff. And my barbarian could take it a little easier. But anyway, yeah, there were dice like that, and yeah, you had got these dice typically uninked. You had to use a crayon or whatever to get wax into the numbers, and you would just use different color crayons so you could have your tens, your ones digits and your tens digits, and you would know the difference until you actually got a real D20 or those came along. Anyway, sorry for the digression, but that just reminded me of that. Okay, to demonstrate this thesis in its simplest form, compare one D12 against 2D6. The D12 has an equal probability of showing any one of its 12 sides, scoring from 1 to 12. But 2D6 has 36 possible combinations it can show, and 6 of them score 7, while only 1 scores 2, and 1 scores 12. Thus, with a D12, you have 1 in 12 chance of rolling a 12. But with 2D6, you only have a 1 in 36 chance of matching it. On the other hand, if the D12 is cast several hundred times, it will average out to 6.5, while the 2D6 will average 7. Herewith, a statistical examination of the... Herewith, a statistical examination of the possibilities and probabilities available with from 1 to 4 of the specialized dice available, and from 1 to 10 d6 with samples taken at 12 d6, 15 d6, and 20 d6 throughout the training continues. I'm not gonna read all this, but this is interesting, because I mean, people probably didn't think about this, and this is why in places like D&D and Cyber Commando, Gary would have the chart with the bell curve to explain why things are the way they are. And of course, you with something like 2d6, you get I think it's called a triangular distribution. But yeah, it's something to consider, for any would-be game designers. Like, you should really understand probability, and what a big difference that's going to make. And how you might have a weighted table, especially with 3d6, and why stats worth 3d6, because you'd land in the middle all the time. So yeah, he did the work here. This is really probably pretty useful. Of course, you have probability calculators on the internet now and all that kind of fun stuff. Okay, so he really digs into that. Okay. Some proposed parameters for firearms were published in APAL a few weeks ago, pursuant to the possible emplacement of a troop of Viet Cong in a swampy jungle along with an ordinary black dragon. VC appear in groups of 3 to 300, just like other people, but have no treasure at all. Their black pajamas are armor class 9, and they only have D4 hit points each. But 50% have rifles, 40% have light machine guns, and 10% have anti-tank or high explosive and flak recoilless weapons capable of delivering damage comparable to a fireball spell. Okay. I don't have much of a comment on that. All the following are handled after the form used in chainmail for projectile weapons, dividing the maximum range into thirds, close, medium, and long, and giving 3 numbers to indicate the 2d6 roll needed to hit at the respective ranges. For instance, the rifle's range is 900 feet, 300 yards, or 90 inches on the standard dungeon scale. Within 300 feet, it hits with a roll of 8. From 300 to 600 feet range, it hits with a roll of 9. From 600 to 900 feet, it hits with a roll of 10 or better. And then he's got stats for rifle, LMG pistol, I guess that's anti-tank weapon, high explosive flak, bazooka, shotgun, as well as notes for each. And then armor class, and the bonus that they would provide against those new weapon types. Grenades, terminology. A turn is 2 moves. A turn was given as 10 minutes game time, but for what is normally accomplished in that space of time, 5 minutes will more than suffice. In melee condition, a turn is 10 rounds. Please let's not get these mixed up anymore. Gygax switched them around a couple places, and it took me a long time to get de-confused. Also, his level of character and level of spell capability did not match. I suggest that spells be referred to as first order to sixth order and like that. Thus, the 7th level magic user can wield 1/4 order spell, 2/3 order spells, etc., etc. This, yeah. See, this has always been a thing, right? Because you got the level of the character, the level of the dungeon, the level of the spell, and they're all called levels. Yeah. 1975, they're trying to fix these things, and they never really get fixed. Okay, so next one we have In This House of Reds by Gail Sellinger. Retyped by Barry Gold. He notes that Gail has moved since. Of course, I've redacted the address. Well, I've been down dungeons, and I've been down dungeons, and I have made some observations that are probably very obvious to anyone else and boring to others. But what the hell? If you don't like it, discuss the problem with Nibbler, who loves engaging in all kinds of conversation. Choosing party leader. I think that everyone over 3rd level should have the opportunity to lead a party down a dungeon if they so desire. Now, don't puff up, folks. Read on. There's no way anyone can learn if they don't have a chance. If the leadership is considered poor and in some way dangerous to the survival of party members, then the others in the party can choose someone else to lead the rest of the way while down exploring. Party leadership seems to shift from individual to individual many times in the course of one journey anyway. I see it like mapping. You can't find a good mapper or train a good or fair mapper unless you give them paper, pencil, and instructions and a chance. Now, there are many who might not want to lead a party. My buddy Bodine is looking over my shoulder as I write this and is yelling in my ear, I don't want to lead a bunch of nuts down the creepies. He gets a little excited, but you get the point. Empty rooms. Blah. You don't have to have wandering monsters and treasure in every room of a dungeon, but heavens, there seems to be a large percentage of more empty rooms than before, and more than anything else lately. I don't mean the fact that there should be no empty rooms, but try to cut them down. Hold up on having a party go down your dungeon, oh great dungeon masters, until you can fill it. Put something interesting there. I happen to know of a dungeon that has pinball parlors and pong palaces scattered throughout, just so there is something to see or do, the visual as well as the tactile. Is there any other expression that can be used besides what do you see? You see a room. Groan. It's tiring to hear, and it's just as tiring to say constantly. Any suggestions? High level type monsters on first level. What is standard here, Dungeon Masters, of some experience? Most people say don't have too many high level monsters on your first 2 floors. It's too hard, it's too dangerous, too unfair, etc. Then I hear rumors of some weird dungeons in a strange land called Sandy Francisco by a dungeon god named Hilda that is supposed to be incredibly difficult from the stairs on down. The day my friend and I received the holy vision of dungeon mastery, we had hard types on our first level. For example, 5th, 6th level on up. Not too hairy or hard, with built-in safeties, just in case the party really couldn't handle it. We were misinformed as to how hard our dungeon sounded, and we had 3rd, 4th, and 5th level type characters having a field day on our first floor. Should have said up to 3rd level characters allowed on that floor only? Or should have said nothing at all and let unblooded types run around loose? We were restocking the anti-magic section, that's why I'm inquiring. Also, we might have to pull some really supers out of the first level temple area and put them down a level or 3. Snicker, snicker, snicker. Trouble is, really, the dungeon is creating itself, and we really don't have much control over the wanderers. We're trying desperately to keep this weirdo 12th level type monster off the first floor, but he takes a lot of persuading to stay off the construction elevators. Running 2 characters. Small parties where you can run 2 of your characters simultaneously are loads of fun. Can we try that one again sometime? I'd like to see first level dungeons continuing if possible so that you can develop new unblooded characters to take down there. Trouble with me is, you see, I have this character that I have no control over who loves a good fight and a lot of excitement. Sigh. Do you think mutants such as the infamous chartreuse jelly mold should have the combined level and hit points of its original substances? Or since a mutant might be weaker than its original substance, be halved of the combined levels? Jawbone. How about that fun duel? I think Fire Gulp would let you sheathe him long enough for a little fun for a friendly game of stun. Lee T. As a 5th level type, having trained in the temple according to real world training since the age of 6, you should be able to use silver coins as a weapon like ninja stars. Since the coins aren't edged as the stars are, you aren't going against any rules from the books. I have seen successful attacks again in the real world, done by silver coins. At a distance of 30 to 50 feet, silver coins were successfully thrown at and did penetrate quite deeply very thick wooden blocks. I'd say that would inflict 2 to 3 points of damage minimum each hit. Those things go in deep. You even missed the demonstration at the Aikido dojo. It was something else. Getting back to the discussion, this type of training would have started on dungeon terms when you reach 3rd level, so you should be quite good by now. No, all you have to do is meditate a little longer and watch the thoughts in your brain and the words that come out of your mouth. Your whole person commands, wisdom, seem to be 2nd level in wording, while your intelligence is 5th level. Unexcusable in a Shaolin priest. Excusable in other characters. It's against your philosophy training. You've had enough question answer periods to use your words more wisely, and when you do that, you will go up at least another belt, if not in dungeon levels. Someone read this to Orion. Congratulations on your magical equipment. I didn't see any reason why I shouldn't have given it to you. Your charisma points are now just the right level. Hope to go down a dungeon with you again soon. You're a good fighter. Yap a lot. Stay away from bridge games. They are lethal to your very being and personality. Well, time to go clean my sword. Thou art God, so you want to be a dungeon master. You have no doubt been lured by the prestige and power that such a character commands, not to mention the cushy job he had during an expedition, lying back, swilling root beer while you rush around trying to protect the life and limb of your character. Well, let me tell you, it isn't all that easy. But since you won't believe me, let's go into what you need. First and most important is a basic understanding of the game. The only way that this can be acquired is through play and the literature available. In any event, you will need the 3 booklets set of Dungeons & Dragons. You may want chainmail, though it isn't all that useful for other than background, and I recommend the supplement that Lee Gold has developed, which may not be available from her. Greyhawk, the supplement to the rules published by TSR, may become useful if you are going to have high-level characters wandering around your dungeon, but at this point it isn't necessary. Next, you will need graph paper. It can be small or large as grid as wish. I find that 6 squares per inch works best for me, and lots of pencils. Place those in a clean working area with few distractions, and you're ready to begin drawing your dungeon. You will need a great deal of imagination for this chore, as well as a touch of fiendishness, a small amount of compassion, and lots of time. It takes me about 2 hours to draw one section of a level, and about 4 hours to completely populate it. But before you start drawing, let me define some terms. First, the scale used is usually 10 feet per square. You can alter this, of course, but experience shows that the scale works best. Room. Any space of any size or shape is not designed as a way of getting from here to there. Rooms can range from 10 feet by 10 feet and smaller to huge caverns comprising 1,000 square feet or more. Corridor. Any space that would not generally be considered a living space by a man or monster. Corridors can be as narrow as 2 feet. They are rarely wider than 25 feet. Corridors wider than 10 feet should be considered main thoroughfares and have an increased chance of wandering monsters. Monster. Anything, human or otherwise, that is encountered by a party in the dungeon. Character. Any member of an expedition. This includes mules and monsters that are joining the party. Player. The persons controlling the characters. Players will generally be your biggest problem when running a dungeon. Treasure. Any item or value picked up by the party. Standard. An ordinary type monster or treasure is listed in any of the literature available. Unique. Any product of the imagination is not otherwise mentioned in the monster or treasure list. Examples have included comic book and fiction characters. Strange devices, such as a slide rule that acted as an anti-magic device, created as a sword. Peculiar potions, a hymn of neutrality, and others too numerous to mention. Uniques tend to spice up the game and make it more interesting for the players. Now to draw the dungeon. The originators of the game suggest that at least 3 levels of dungeon be constructed at a given time. This enables you to put in such things as trapdoors and chutes without having to worry about there not being anywhere for them to go. Place distinctive features first. If you want quarters or sets of rooms that form words or pictures, you'd best remember the sign "Plan Ahead." Make sure that rooms are not too big unless you have something specific planned to inhabit them. There's nothing quite so dull to a party as a large room that is empty or inhabited by some sort of minor monster. When the main feature is placed, fill in around it. It is often easiest at this point just to relax and let your subconscious be your guide. Remember that odd-shaped rooms make a level harder to map. Remember, also, that upward and downward mobility is necessary for the full enjoyment of the game. As you place stairs and ramps, etc., pinpoint where they come out on the next level down or whatever. On the lowest level, place stairs and ramps, but seal them off until the next level is constructed. I would suggest investing in some plastic sheet protectors to protect your dungeon and your notes on it from wear and tear. A grease pencil can be used to mark out the things that have been removed by previous parties. I type out my notes. This takes a bit more time, but it's nice to have them legible, especially when many details are required to describe a monster or its treasure. Next month, populating your dungeon. This column is written by Robert Hollander exclusively for Alarums Excursions, a Dungeons & Dragons fan magazine. Any comments or questions concerning the tense of this column can be addressed to me through the pages of the August publication or directly to the address below. Later columns will include comments on the Greyhawk supplement, hopefully the later supplements will be published by TSR, a Vulture publication. Melee Mayday by Lee Gold. Some things you might discuss next issue if you didn't find any comment hooks anywhere else. Number 1, if a caveman, essentially neutral, puts on a helm of chaos and then picks up a neutral lawful sword, does he receive damage? How about if he does it in reverse order? Number 2, how much is a +1 sword with an IQ of 9 worth? What basis is general do you decide worth a magical treasure? Number 3, if a character is charmed, is the spell stopped when A, the spellcaster throws it, attempts to lift it? Does the charm get a saving throw? B, the character who threw it is slept, runs away. D, the character who threw it is killed. That was probably supposed to be C. D again, a charm, hold, dispel evil, remove curse, dispel magic is thrown from the other side. Does the charm get a saving throw, etc.? I'm going to skip through these, I guess. It's just ideas, to get people interested in contributing or writing their own little zines to be added. And of course, Greyhawk had just come out, so she sums all this up with, and what do you think about Greyhawk? Okay, that's the end of the issue. Now, this was only 29 pages. It's the first issue. I think by issue 10, we're up to like 75 or maybe more. Can't remember. But anyway, thanks for listening. Sorry, I was a little tongue-tied this episode. Some of this was tough going just for legibility and just how it was written. But thanks for sticking through it if you did. Catch you in the next one.